In spring 2018, I had the opportunity to visit Qumran, a small ancient settlement on the coast of the Dead Sea. Qumran is most famous as the site where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, a huge collection of Jewish texts from the Second Temple period, and one of the most important archaeological discoveries for scholars of the Bible and ancient Judaism in general. What you're seeing here is footage I took on a visit to the Dead Sea Scrolls lab at the Israel Museum, as well as my exploration of Qumran itself. But what is the connection between this site and the scrolls themselves? You may have heard the story of the Dead Sea Scrolls discovery. In 1946, a few Bedouin shepherds stumble upon a cave full of scrolls. Some are biblical texts, like the Great Isaiah Scroll, and some are previously unknown, like the War Scroll, a sectarian text that describes an apocalyptic battle at the end of time. But you might not know what happened next. Archaeologists and Bedouins swooped in and discovered more caves and more scrolls. In all, 11 caves were discovered with scroll fragments adding up to approximately 900 different scrolls. What you're looking at here is Cave 4, easily visible from the site, and by far the cave that yielded the most evidence, thousands of tiny fragments that added up to at least 500 different scrolls. Although we usually think about the famous scrolls that were nearly intact, most of these 900 scrolls were small fragments, like what you're seeing here at my visit to the Dead Sea Scrolls lab. Imagine the crazy jigsaw puzzle it was for scholars to try to piece these together and identify which fragments go with which scroll. Now, some archaeologists have suggested that Qumran was simply a villa or a workshop, but most agree that whoever lived at Qumran were probably the ones who composed most of the scrolls and eventually hid them in these caves. Although no scrolls were found in the settlement itself, the same pottery type that the scrolls were stored in have been found there. Moreover, one of the rooms discovered had long mud brick tables and benches along with inkwells mixed in with the artifacts, which is a rare find in the archaeology of this region. So archaeologists have interpreted this as a specialized writing room where the inhabitants may have composed the scrolls. But who were these people? Taken as a whole, the archaeology of Qumran suggests that they were a sectarian Jewish community, purposely living an ascetic lifestyle in a tight-knit, self-sustaining settlement out in the desert, away from the bustle of cities like Jerusalem or Jericho. The settlement itself is not that fancy. Simple buildings built out of rough-cut stones, no evidence of interior decoration either on the walls or floors. It's hard to estimate how many people lived here, since some of them might have lived in tents or the caves themselves, but archaeologists estimate around 100 or 150 based on the size of the dining room. At least we think it's the dining room because in the adjacent room, excavators discovered a hoard of 1,000 dishes, a pantry of sorts. We know what they were eating too. Archaeologists discovered deposits of bones around the site that show evidence of being butchered, but only kosher animals, sheep, cow, and goat bones were found, no pigs. The community also devoted a huge amount of resources and energy into the Jewish practice of ritual bathing. For such a small site, Qumran has a crazy amount of ritual baths called mikveh, around 10 or 11. These were stepped pools used for ritual purification. You would walk down the steps and immerse yourself in a basin at the deepest point. Some are designed with a partition, like this one, that designate where to enter and where to exit. These pools were connected to a complicated water system fed by flash floods that probably only occurred a few times a year. So it's possible that these pools were not particularly fresh, illustrating that ritual purity does not necessarily mean hygienic. So from the archaeology alone, we see the outlines of a community that kept a kosher diet, participated in communal meals, and regularly engaged in ritual bathing. And some of the scrolls might shed even more light on their sectarian form of Judaism. The community rule, for example, one of the first scrolls to be discovered, goes into great detail about a communal meal as forming an important part of their daily life, and the necessity to ritually bathe on a daily basis. Myself and many other scholars agree that this community rule was the rule book for this specific Qumran community, a highly sectarian, apocalyptic group that viewed themselves as the sons of light battling against the sons of darkness. Even 50 years after the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's a lot to learn about them. Some recent projects include PhD candidate Michael Johnson's research that uses 3D imaging technology to re-roll the scrolls to see what they originally looked like. Also, the lab I visited at the Israel Museum is using multispectral imaging to reveal their composition and topography, which even reveals previously illegible words on the scrolls. For years, I've had a connection with the Dead Sea Scrolls in Qumran. In my first year of graduate school, I wrote a term paper on the ritual baths, and the first video I ever posted on Religion for Breakfast was an overview of the theories about who wrote them. Just look at that terrible haircut and production quality. But nothing beats visiting the site itself or getting up close and personal with the artifacts. It's a surreal experience to look at a piece of parchment and try to come to grips with the idea that you're looking at a 2,000-year-old artifact, and to come to grips with the idea that some guy living in a desert compound thousands of years ago put pen to parchment to make it in the first place. And as always, thanks for watching.